Well, good afternoon or good evening or good whenever you're watching this. You've already looked, I hope, at the first YouTube that I put up for our finance and budgeting course, or if you prefer budget and finance. What I'm going to do tonight, because we got kind of excited and did some good stuff last week, but I didn't get to say much about the textbook. And maybe that's what I'll end up doing. Rather than kind of mundanely plodding through the text, what I'll try and do with these YouTubes is cover the basic high points that I want you to look for. And this is that first text reading. So let me go ahead and do that over the next 10 minutes or so. I think the first thing, I am being slightly reiterative in the sense that what I told you excites me about this course is the number of interviews that I have sat through over 30 years. And every place I have been in 3 states, it's very, very important that the people that come in, even faculty, understand the nature of budget and finance. And the number of people who have expertise in that area, you can count on the fingers of one hand. And I don't mean the thumb. Okay, a couple things I wanted to give you again. As you start this, there's an awful lot there. A couple things you ought to remember. I use 2 acronyms that are important. The first one is NCHEMS, N-C-H-E-M-S, National Collegiate Higher Education Management System. You have Dr. Jones material, Dennis Jones material, but there's a lot of stuff up there that you can look at if you're looking for good substantive material. And the other one is more directly related to budgeting, and that is called NACUBO, National Association of College and University Business Officers. Those 2 can be looked up on the internet just as I gave them to you, NCHEMS or NACUBO. Okay, one thing I want to say for the benefit of a couple of you who are working in the K-12 system. In my opinion, there is a great deal more similarity than difference in the budgeting process. So as you start to look at this and you think about your interview and you think about what you're going to assess, if it'll be of help to you career-wise, please feel free. I consider it a personal benefit because I talked with Dr. Welsh. He used to be involved with urban ed. He's now with higher ed. But I'm supposed to meet with the director of urban next week. And I'm going to talk with him, or her, I'm not sure who it is, how important it is that you folks get that same activity, that same level of insight for K-12 as you're picking up if you're higher ed or community college. Okay, we've gone through the types of systems, more on that later. I do want to talk about the components of a budget again. I went through that very quickly. I think it's very helpful if I speak to it again. Everyone is familiar with an operating budget. Now, the operating budget, as we said, kind of divides conveniently into 2 parts, 2 major parts. The first part is all those operating elements that have supplies, materials of instruction, equipment, professional development, all those things. The other one is personnel. As I indicated the last time we met, you are not allowed to move money into or out of personnel except under very severe circumstances. The other line items you can usually make some mobility into or out of, and I think that probably is very helpful. The other one, of course, is your auxiliary enterprise. Depending on where you are working, that can be your cafeteria, that can be your bookstore, that can be anything that is a standalone enterprise. Now, what does that mean? It means, by and large, mostly it pays its own expenses. It covers its own overhead. We have an arboretum at the community college I was with. That is a standalone enterprise. We also have an alumni association, which is a standalone enterprise. These are auxiliaries. They have to cover their own costs. You have a capital budget, and I said that divides into 2 parts. Excuse me. The first part being buildings. Anything that is going to be constructed that has a life expectancy of equipment. Buildings are usually considered anything beyond 5 years. The other half of the capital budget is usually equipment that has a life expectancy of more than up to 5 years. If it's a piece of equipment that can be replaced in 18 months, it's in the operating budget. Okay, the other budget that you will see because it has to be kept separate, usually by the funding agent requirements, is what we call a grant budget. There are a lot of them out there. K-12, I was very close partners with our friends in Career and Tech Ed, because the Perkins Career Technology Education Act, community colleges had a piece, K-12 had the big piece, and we worked collaboratively. You get funding in a special grant budget from the state of Maryland if you're working K-12 for students with special needs. We were not fortunate enough. 25 years ago, the presidents of the community colleges screwed up on that, or we would have been part of the award coming down from the Fed to the state, eventually to you folks in K-12. It's a good thing. I guess the way I would synthesize all of this is to say a phrase that I found very entertaining reading one of our management theorists. He talked about living in a world of constant whitewater, and that would be part of it. As you look at the chapter, they tell you a couple of things that are helpful. First, they talk about recessions. Well, hell, recessions are omnipresent in this culture. If you skim, as I asked you to, the chapter that I did in that manual for community colleges, it was at the height of a recession, very close to the one we have now. And we're slowly coming out. Another 5 years, we'll have another one. It's the nature of the animal. And that has a great deal of competition among all levels, K-12, community college, and higher education, universities, colleges, for money. The other thing that you need to be aware of that we didn't talk about is something called unfunded mandates, that the federal government or state government will tell you, you must do this. For our K-12 friends, NCLB, No Child Left Behind, is probably the biggest one. But there are OSHA standards, occupational health and safety, and then there's also MOSH, which is Maryland Occupational Health and Safety. Dealing with special needs students, with your facilities, and meeting standards, you have ADA. In terms of what you keep secret, it requires that you have some people in the FERPA program. And of course, civil rights and human rights continue to be a big issue. One of the things we talked about, and I used the subtitle, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, is what's going on with technology. At the rate in which social media changes, the rate in which computers change, the rate in which other kinds of technology that support teaching change, it's a very, very expensive process and gives a lot of fiscal officers headaches. Creates the old Italian condition called agita. It agitates what we do. Okay, the second thing, which is a challenge for all of us at the higher ed level, community college and university, is the idea, how do we cover those costs? One of the things that gets legislators upset because it upsets parents is when we jack tuition up too quickly and too high, okay? But just look at your own bill from our beloved, soon to be alma mater, Morgan State. Fees everywhere. That's a way to get around the difficulty with jacking tuition up too quickly. The other thing is a new kind of competition. We've always competed for students. And as these specialty schools open up, charter schools and what have you, competition at K-12 is real. State of Indiana has just created a whole new, I'll use a Yiddish word, mishigas, craziness. I would hope that several of you, maybe our colleague from DE, would be able to give us some insight into the potential implication of this material coming from the state of Indiana. Just a couple things to mention quickly as we draw it to a close. Public, private, we have systems. Maryland, we're lucky. I would not work in a districted system again. Thank God I don't have to. Maryland has coterminous counties and school districts and community college districts. Great. It gives you one target to shoot at. At higher ed, you have national systems. We have the Gang of 11. Morgan is somewhat separate from them, but we're a state school. Why do I talk about national systems? Kaplan. We have a Kaplan campus in Hagerstown. There's a Kaplan campus in D.C. It's a major private for-profit institution. Phoenix, probably the largest of the private national systems. You teach for them, you follow their rules. In the state of Virginia, everything in higher ed goes to Richmond. In the state of Indiana, They have a contract with a private entity called Ivy Tech. Very quickly, we'll wrap it up here, and I'll say that text is very helpful because they do link you in to the real world. Have fun. I'll see you on the 9th or the 12th, whatever it is.